Before this Superman, after this Superman, there was this Superman, and his film was a frustratingly mixed bag, but it did get one thing exactly right. Let's take a look. Welcome back, my friend. I'm sorry it's been a while. Somehow, Superman Returns celebrated its 20th anniversary this summer. I'm having a hard time accepting that, since I can so vividly remember both my anticipation to see it and my experience first watching it. While I'm a bit cooler on the film now than I was then, after 2 decades I've still retained a strange affection for it. Superman Returns is a fascinatingly odd duck. Tonally confused, awkwardly paced, visually inconsistent, and yet, occasionally, genuinely brilliant. It's also impossible to discuss the film today without acknowledging the controversies that have surrounded director Bryan Singer for most of his career. While I don't want to get bogged down in them, I don't think it's responsible to gloss over them either. Instead of venturing an uninformed opinion, I'd rather let his survivors speak for themselves. I'm going to link in the show notes to a 2021 Variety article in which Singer's former partner, Blake Stuerman, provides his account of who and what the director is. With that unpleasantness out of the way, let's crack on. In his foreword to the collected edition of Frank Miller's Batman opus The Dark Knight Returns, comic book legend Alan Moore says this about the atypical depiction of Batman's world we see in the book. Everything is exactly the same, except for the fact that it's all totally different. The same is very much true of Superman Returns. Everything from the score to the cinematography and the production design makes the familiar feel strange. Everything is exactly the same. Lex Luthor still has a master plan involving a land grab. Lois Lane still can't spell. Martha Kent still lives on a bucolic farmstead that looks like it was painted by Norman Rockwell. But it's all totally different. Instead of the dreamlike haze of Jeffrey Unsworth's soft-focus anamorphic cinematography, we have Panavision Genesis digital cameras, spherical lenses, and a high-contrast image with a more post-millennial teal and orange colour grading. Digital visual effects take the place of matte paintings, optical effects, and miniature photography. Metropolis is no longer New York Redux, but a stylised Art Deco sketch of a major metropolitan city. Instead of a homespun costume that Clark could conceivably have fashioned himself from his swaddling blankets, we have a screen-printed bodysuit emblazoned with thousands of tiny S logos. Instead of heady romantic melodrama, we have a bittersweet love triangle and a hint at blended family. Why is this? Is it to cater to 21st century expectations of how a Superman film should look and feel? Possibly. Because the filmmakers wanted to reshape Big Blue's cinematic language while respecting what came before? Probably. However, I think our sense of alienation is also supposed to reflect Clark's. We're returning to a cinematic universe we think we know, but the status quo has shifted, and Superman needs to find his place again in a world that's adapted to life without him. Interestingly, Superman Returns anticipates a lot of the tropes that would come to define the franchise legacy sequel. Evocative use of beloved musical motifs? Check. CGI resurrection of a dead actor? Check. A soft continuation that selectively ignores less popular sequels while positioning itself as the spiritual heir to a beloved original? Big old check. However, where later legacy sequels would often use nostalgia for a victory lap, Superman Returns infuses it with melancholy. Superman doesn't return to a world frozen in amber, waiting patiently for his arrival. He returns to discover that life has continued without him. Lois Lane has fallen in love with somebody else. The city has learned to get by, and his nemesis eluded justice because he wasn't around to testify against him. Lois Lane, bitter and resentful at being abandoned not just by her hero but the man she loves, channels her scorn into an editorial that earns her a Pulitzer. What's more, the child she shares with Superman, born of their soul tryst in Superman 2, she remembers as Richard White's after Superman erased her memory of their coupling. And remember, we're not going to think too hard about the moral implications of that. Speaking of Richard, I'm really glad the film didn't treat him as an obstacle to be removed, but as a good man who's worthy of Lois and Jason's adoration. And respecting his relationship with Lois is intrinsic to Clark's growth as a character. He can mourn his lost love, but his resolution comes from acceptance rather than reconciliation. The implication of all this is that nostalgia is a beautiful place to visit, but a dangerous place to live. Superman Returns suggests that while our memories can bring us joy, trying to recreate them leaves us ill-equipped to embrace our present. Superman Returns has a love-hate relationship with nostalgia. It wants to celebrate its past while pushing its narrative into new and uncomfortable territory. While this is reflected in everything from the casting to the production design, it's really epitomised in the music, and it starts before the film even begins. Like many Warner Brothers films from the late 90s onwards, the title card display in the WB shield is surrounded by a fanfare featuring the closing bars of As Time Goes By. Uniquely, this dovetails into a few notes of John Williams' Superman theme. Bum, 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 bum. A core tenet of Superman Returns' thesis is helping us see and hear familiar things in ways that feel new, fresh, and in some cases, subversive. John Ottman, who both scored and edited the film, weaves the classic leitmotifs with his own compositions in some really intriguing ways. For instance, in the flashback scene when young Clark explores his growing powers on the Kent farm, we hear a bracing combination of Williams' Superman and Smallville themes, hinting at young Clark's future. A more subversive use of the score comes in a poignant recreation of Superman and Lois' first flight. As the pair return to the Daily Planet building, the romantic theme from the first film begins to swell, but then stalls, suspending a note in eternity as they float back to the rooftop. The old feelings are still there, but the reality surrounding them has changed. Richard White is a good man. Superman has been gone for 5 years. These are immutable facts that Clark will need to reckon with if he's to grow. Ultimately, I think Superman Returns' thesis is that you can't go back. You can't return to old homes, former workplaces and lost loves and expect to pick up right where you left off. The world is different. You're different. The people and places around you are different. What you can do is learn to grow in order to accommodate that change. We can learn to be happy for lost loves who found happiness without us. We can prove our worth to those who've lost faith in us. We can find meaning in a changed world instead of expecting the good old days to last forever. I think that's actually quite a beautiful and progressive message for a superhero film. Because it exists within the framework of capitalism, pop culture needs to be evergreen, forever relevant, and forever profitable. Inevitably then, it has a tricky relationship with the passing of time. This is especially true of comic books, in which our protagonists must remain forever 29, lantern-jawed and locked into thrilling spirals of conflict and resolution with the same old antagonists. And when the past gets too messy, and continuity ties itself in knots, a deus ex machina like Mephisto or the Anti-Monitor comes along to wipe the slate clean, We've now seen this paradigm played out in our cinema. Reboot, reuse, recycle. Throw in enough of the past to make the audience feel at home, while keeping their sights set firmly on the next chapter. We can see this in Superman 2025, which cherry-picked aesthetic elements from the same source as Superman Returns, and repurposed them into a more self-consciously comic booky mise-en-scène. It's also abundantly present in the marketing for the upcoming Avengers Doomsday. While Superman Returns is far from being the most egregious example of a studio repackaging our childhoods and selling them back to us with a fresh coat of paint, it does preempt a trend that would come to define Hollywood. While, after 20 years, it remains an uneven film that never quite satisfies, it's nonetheless a fascinating artifact. And I rather respect its argument that we can cherish the rose-tinted vignettes of the past, but we still need to reckon with the realities of the present. Nostalgia can be a soothing balm for us when our present feels abrasive or alienating, but it can also trap us in a golden yesteryear that never quite existed in the way we remember it. And the longer we stay there, the harder it becomes to accept the present on its own terms. So, take care, my friend. Be kind. And remember, you may feel different, but even if you feel like an outcast, you will never be alone.